So let's start here with Jakub. It says, my name is Jakub and I love my job as a 3D artist. I recommend checking out the game Cleaner Company. I'm working on it as a 3D artist. Peace, bro. Awesome. Like I always like seeing people who are already working. That's a really like encouraging thing, because I know we always say, oh, the industry's in shambles and it's in a crisis and whatever, but there are opportunities out there. So the first impression that I get is that you're definitely a hard surface guy and you're definitely doing guns. I've mentioned this before. I personally don't. It's not that I don't like, but it's just that I've seen so many of this like commonly used weapons, like the AK-47, like this USP, like this what is it, like this to me looks way more interesting. It's a gun that I don't see often, and I feel like it's again like a little bit more interesting. Be very careful with this sort of things. Like it looks like tape that's going around. For instance, there's like a wooden stock here on the back, and the thing that I see is that it's a little bit loose. It looks like it's loose, and like this will just fall off, right? So if it's something that's gonna be like stuck to the whole thing, just make sure that you actually stuck it. I like these renders right here, the lighter renders a little bit more. I do think your grain is a little bit too high. This is a very common mistake, by the way, guys. I was talking about this with another student the other day. When you're doing weapons, when you're doing renders, you gotta be very careful with the intensity of your height map. Look at stuff around you. Like right now I have a wooden desk here with me, and the grain of the wood is nowhere near as like rough as what I have right here. I mean, I have a barrel over here, which is supposed to be rougher wood, and that grain is not as intense as what we have right here. If you make, or if you do an element that has a very intense, very intense height, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to change the scale of the object. So the bigger the intensity of the detail, the smaller the object is going to see. It's going to look like a miniature, because in order for us to see this intensity of detail, we will need to have like a very small little element. So be very careful. And this is something that's, again, relatively easy to fix. If you're inside of Substance Painter, just bring the height information down so that you don't get that much stuff. In terms of optimization, I mean, this is nitpicking at this point, of course, but in terms of optimization, when you have surfaces like this right here, or let me start over there. When you're looking at your wireframe and you want to optimize things, the first thing that you need to look for are these areas right here. Areas where there's no silhouette change. See how this thing just goes straight down? If it goes straight down, you can remove a couple of these edge loops. And even though, yes, this is not going to be uniform anymore, the texture is not going to change, the silhouette is not going to change, and you're going to be able to optimize that a little bit more. Optimization is important. We got like very, very viral a couple of weeks ago when I said, poly count doesn't matter. It was a little bit clickbaity, I'm going to admit. But my point was that even though like a poly count is an important aspect of thing, we need to focus on some specific elements, and I would say optimization is one of those, depending of course on the platform, right? Now another point where you can like look at this kind of stuff is this areas right here. If the element that you're going to be using or including does not change the silhouette, right, like we are always going to see this as a sort of like flat surface, you can probably skip doing the retopology for that little bolt and just bake it down to the normal. The normal is going to give you pretty much the exact same shadow, pretty much the exact same sort of like a glint or little light, so it's gonna make it a little bit easier for you. Same for like lines like this. Like see this line going around this area? Like this is a surface where things are just like very uniform, so we can skip and reduce some of these elements. Of course we're gonna need them down here, so you're probably gonna have like a couple of triangles down here, but there is a possibility where, whoa, let's go right there. There is a possibility where we could like optimize this thing a little bit more. Okay. And finally, you have this car right here. This looks very nice. I like it. So one of the things that I was going to mention, and it seems like you are doing it a little bit more on these elements, but be very careful with the amount of damage. Be very careful with the amount of damage that we add in terms of like metal etchware. I always mention this. Metal etchware, rust, every single generator that we do instead of Substance Painter, we gotta be very careful. So for instance here, I see that this guy's right here, this whole guy right here, and this whole guy right here, all of the edge, it's exactly damaged in the exact same way. There's a very nice like principle. God, getting my shortcuts confused now. There's a very important principle called the BMG. There we go. There's this very important principle called BMG. Big, medium. Oh my God. BMS. There you go. Big, medium, small. And this principle tells us that if we're doing something, any type of detail, like imagine like hair or something, and we keep the shapes very uniform, this is very boring. This is not going to help us. But if we mix it up and we do slightly different variations in terms of size and scale, we're going to get something that's a little bit more interesting. So we can do the exact same thing here on the car. So imagine that instead of having this very uniform rust all the way around, we grab a little bit of this and we add like a big spot of rust here. That's going to be our big element. Then everything is medium. And then there's a couple of spots where there's not much going on, right? So we can imagine that we're going to remove a little bit of this. And this is the trick that I showed you before, where inside of Substance, we can use something like a clouds generator or like a grunge generator to break up the silhouette. So that right there, as you can see, it's going to give us something that looks a little bit more interesting. And it doesn't require that much work to go in there and just like modify things a little bit. And it's going to, again, like elevate your piece to a more professional level, something that looks a little bit more natural and more unique, okay? So remember, big, medium, and small shapes. In general, my friend, I think you have a good portfolio. You're already working. There's not much I can tell you at that point. Like at this point, just focus on doing great work, focus on building connections, focus on making sure that you have and you're learning more stuff as you keep working, and improve your portfolio. As soon as you can add some of the stuff from your work in your portfolio, that's awesome. And yeah, just like do more of this stuff. Again, to hard surface artists, one of the things that I recommend, mechs. Mechs are always fun. Robots or big vehicles, sci-fi stuff, something that again is not as common as the typical weapons that we see in the modern shooters. That's gonna make your portfolio a little bit more unique. But you have all of the skills necessary here, my friend. I really don't see any holes in your knowledge. So great stuff.